Well, all right. Hello to all of you and welcome back. It's Monday, which means it's the start of a new week, week 4. And let me just say a couple of things as I finished grading the previous week's papers. As always, um, be mindful of the parts of the paper that we grade on. Expected to have an introduction as well as a body or the main content, substance of the paper, and then wrap it up with a short conclusion. It may be 3 to 4 sentences, but to get the most points available to you, your conclusion ought to highlight the most important aspects of your paper, which you just finished talking about, but also um, the conclusion serves as a way to help me remember what your paper was about. So be mindful of that as you write this week's papers, and I look forward to reading those. But as far as week 4 goes, we're moving on to learn more about the context of um, of where Christianity was birthed during the time of Christ and afterwards in the book of Acts. And so we're learning about the extent of the influence of the Roman Empire, as well as the connection between the temple's destruction, which happened in AD 70. Remember, this is not the first temple. Solomon's temple, which was built in the 10th century, right around the year 950 BC, Solomon built the temple. And it stayed up for about 400 years. And then in the year 586 or so, the Babylonians conquered Israel and destroyed the temple, Solomon's temple at that time. And then again, the temple was rebuilt, so we have a second temple. And then in the year 20 BC, so approximately 16 to 20 years before the time of Christ, Herod the Great added to the second temple, and it was then called Herod's Temple until it was destroyed in the year 70 by the Romans. Again, the Jews were not content to be under the thumb of Roman oppression. They were tired of being taxed, which taxes, we think our taxes are bad. It was nothing compared to the first century and being under Roman authority. Taxes were very, very high for all people. So Herod's temple was destroyed in 70 when the Jewish community revolted against the Roman Empire. Ultimately, the temple was destroyed and they were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. We're also going to talk about Paul's missionary journeys as well as just talk briefly about similarities between Christians and Jews, as well as some of those major differences. The readings for this week, a little bit lighter than the previous weeks, but just note here, Encountering the New Testament, pages 179 to 253, in the Making of the New Testament, pages 147 to 165. Now let's go back here. Also, please be aware there are some videos for you to watch to help you in your class discussion and in your application assignments. Also, Zoom live Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, if you can make it. Love to have you as we discuss this week's content. Discussion questions for this week. All right, the first one just simply is, why was the Roman Empire and its infrastructure so important to the spread of early Christianity? Again, 150 word minimum. And then also the second question for this week is, why is the book of Acts historically and theologically significant? And then your two papers, as usual, for this week are, let's get down here to it really quick, in 1 to 2 pages, discuss both the details surrounding and the significance of Paul's conversion found in the book of Acts. You can turn there, use your Encountering the New Testament textbook to help you, as well as any of the resources listed in the week 4 Explore section. And then finally, your application for this week is again 1 to 2 pages, compare and contrast the views and beliefs of early first century Christians and Jews. You need to be very careful here, friends. Okay, you need to remember that the first Christians were Jews. Jesus was Jewish, lived in a Jewish context, did ministry in Israel. His disciples, who are eventually the closest 12, become apostles, were Jews, and they took on disciples. And then we see in the book of Acts, Paul and others going out beyond the borders of Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. And we see Gentiles, that's us. Every time you see the word Gentile in the biblical text, you need to think, hey, that's me. I'm a Gentile. We're not Jewish by birth. And so, as Gentiles, we are then incorporated into the family of God by faith in Christ and what he accomplished, of course, in the cross and the resurrection. We've been adopted, as Paul says in Romans chapters 8, 9, and 10. We've been adopted into the family of God, and we are co-heirs then. As adopted children, we are co-heirs with Christ. And so, need to keep that in mind when we read. And we're talking about the beliefs and the differences between first century Christians and Jews. So be very, very careful about what you say there, okay? So don't go off on too many tangents, just as I did. But I just want to safeguard you. You know, there's a path for us to travel on, and the path has guardrails on it as we go forward, and it's always wise to stay within those guardrails. So if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Happy to answer those, and I hope you have a great week, everybody. Take care.